My name is Kari Ginger, and I am your host of Know Better, Live Best. My guest today is the founder of Harris-Robinette Beef. Patrick Harris enlightens us on the process of the incredible amount of work that goes into the food before we put it on our plates, how he differentiates himself from his competition, and my favorite, why quality sourcing and transparency is important to him. Know Better, Live Best is dedicated to supporting food and health literacy in people of all ages. Our mission is to cut through the misinformation surrounding food, health, and nutrition because we believe that when people know better, they can make the right choices and live their best lives. We are presented by Biteable Foods. They use blockchain and Internet of Things technology to build traceable, transparent food systems because it shouldn't take an investigative journalist to find out where food comes from. Hi, I am here with Patrick Robinette. Hi, Patrick. Thanks for joining me today.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing great. It's a beautiful Saturday morning. Well, it's really cloudy, but it's Saturday morning, and I love that. So,
Yes, ma'am.
anyway, super happy to have you here. So we're just going to dive right in. So I want you to tell us about your company. I'm just going to let you describe it and how you got started and your big why.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. We are Harris-Robinette Beef. We're a 100% grass-fed beef operation located in North Carolina. And how I got started was actually because of ADHD. I knew that growing up that I could not have a job that I needed to be stuck at a desk doing the same thing every day. I couldn't do it. And so I grew up, my dad was in the military, and we moved around a lot. And I had found my love and passion in agriculture. And then to kind of, I worked for a couple ranches and later in high school, and then went into college knowing that I was going to be an agriculture major. And then I met my wife, who grew up in a farming, row crop farming family. She is fourth generation on the farm. The farm was founded in the early 1800s, so it's actually classified as a century farm. And so we had moved to the Midwest and managed a feedlot out there. And then my father-in-law got sick, and he couldn't run the farm no more. He was struggling with things, and so we moved back. But the deal between my wife and I was, when we moved back, I was going to be around cattle, and cattle's not normally a livestock industry in North Carolina. So I was like, I'm going to find cows. And but then things kind of really got very interesting in how it laid out. An old mentor of mine, friend of mine over at NC State, and I went lunch, and he said, you really need to look at grass-fed beef. And this was in 2000, before it was cool and before everybody was doing it. And I had some reservations until I started looking at it, and I was like, this is what we do out in the Midwest. We don't feed commodities except for in the feedlot. And I was like, well, this ain't so bad. And so we've transitioned through the years, but that's the basis of it. ADHD and my wife is why we do where we're at and how we've gotten here.
I love people's stories, and yours really resonates with me. I'm a kindergarten teacher myself, as I told you earlier. And, you see these students, and it's a struggle, ADD, ADHD, and they're going to do great things in life. It. It's just the actual aspect of school. And and I'm sure we've come a long way in teaching as well. We find ways to make it easier. And as there's just different things we can do, and ways to sit and getting up. And I love it all, and just trying to help that student achieve their potential, because down the road they're going to achieve the greatest things, more than we could imagine. And look at you, here you are, you're just proof of that.
We laugh about it. I did a interview before, and I told a person, I said, I got ADHD, and I says, before they had medication, all we got was a butt whooping. But it's rather funny how you're labeled with a problem. Mm-hmm. But the problem is that we think so different. My wife brings that up all the time. She's like, how did you end up there? And I was like, well, you see, and that's how it all started. And my son, he always talks about, he says, he describes it as that his brain is a race car and it's going around the track. He said every once in a while you got to make a pit stop and that's to sleep, but then you're going to go 200 miles an hour around the track. And so anyhow, that's how he portrays the problem.
Right.
But I mean, you know, it is what it is, and you've got to figure out how to deal with it. And my way of dealing with it is looking at the cattle industry and saying, okay, what's wrong with it? How do you fix it? And then having that energy and that different thinking to be able to get out of the box. And so,
well, it's just turning into like solution focused. I love that. It's like, there's this problem that's, you know, great.
Yes.
We can complain about it all we want. What are we going to do about it?
Well, that's true.
Yeah, getting the job done. That's what you're doing. Mm-hmm. So I have to ask, so your wife grew up around farming. Was she happy when she met you and found out that that's what you wanted to do as well? Or did she want to get away from it? Was she happy to be digging back in?
That's actually a funny story. So there's 3 things that my mother-in-law preached to my wife. Number 1, do not live off the highway. Number 2, don't marry somebody or fall in love with somebody that hunts. And number 3, don't get involved in agriculture. And it's rather funny that that's how all that worked out. But you also got to go to the root of it. And the root of it is that's what our generation's parents who are in agriculture are telling their kids. Don't come back. A lot of it is they can't afford to come back.
Right.
That means they have to grow. It means you got to get more in debt. That means you got to get more equipment, more land. Don't come back and stay clear of it. And in the 80s and the early 90s was really hard in agriculture with interest rates and markets and quotas, and there was all this stuff. And so, yeah, that was the interesting thing, because that's what my wife was preached on every day. And then she met me, and it was by coincidence. I was she lived in one dorm room across from me, or dorm building across from me. And we met the first day of the state fair. We attended the state fair every day and never been apart since, 23 years later. But, you know, it is one of those, that was not her intention in life. But it resonates in the early days, and I know we'll probably talk about the business side of things. Mm-hmm. But you really don't know, where your income's coming, and so there's challenges from a family standpoint and everything, but again, thinking differently and stuff allowed us to continue to plow through all of this, and to develop where we're at, and to have some realizations in life. And so, but yeah, it's, no, this was not her intention. And my father-in-law fusses at me every day because he spent every year, again, you guys think we're not too far into having tractors. My father-in-law farmed with mules in his early years of farming, and and he's out there. It was a complete row crop farm. We converted it over to a pasture land, so we're planting grass in the same fields where he was having a hoe in his hand, having chopped grass, and so it's just a constant battle in our house. But anyhow,
who had it harder?
Just,
one of those arguments. Oh, back in my day, what I had to do. No.
Yeah, my son always steps back. My father-in-law and I just, we just have a difference opinions, and I have to remind him who's the one at risk, and and then he stops, but then he has his opinion, and it's like, let's just move on. I got a lot to do. So, but it is what it is. So yeah.
So what is a day in your life like? Because I can only imagine. I know you had said, and I read up on you too, that no day's ever the same, which is perfect for you.
Yes. Yeah. I don't get bored.
Right.
I don't get bored at all. Day in life that's really interesting now. We've kind of transitioned over time, and day in life would be nothing but farm. And, but we simplified the production, and that's what's so funny. Like, we have people that are like, hey, can we come to the farm and see the operation? And I'm like, well, you're going to be disappointed. And they go, why? I said, it's cows and grass. I said, there's nothing to it. There's no like major machinery and no big processes. It's cows and grass. So we simplified that whole process. And that was the other side to it, and the business side to it. I literally looked at this whole production system and said, every time a cow reaches down and eats a blade of grass, that's making money. Every time I have to turn a key, that's costing money. Mm-hmm. And so, like, I work to limit the whole costing piece. And so, like, transitioning cows to do nothing, eat nothing but grass, and to gain off of nothing but grass, cut our feed time down, to nothing. They're eating right now. They're feeding themselves. Going and converting into our fertilizer program, what we're doing means that we're not running tractors 4 or 5 times a year. Mother Nature and the cows are basically doing it now. But at the same time, it's still working a 16-hour day, because I've transitioned over into other things, government regulations. We own our own USDA facility, and having to deal with government regulations and inspectors and things like that. Marketing, meeting with customers. Unfortunately, I don't get to play with cows as much as I used to. And hopefully we're going to get back to that time that I can. But yeah, now it's just dealing with regulations, mapping out how we do things differently. How do we solve, we haven't solved problems because nobody has run across situations that we run across. Mm-hmm. I have one chef friend of mine, he says, people normally ride the wave, the trend wave. He said, Patrick, you're out paddling out ahead of it. And that was so resonating. And there's a lot of things that we're figuring out, and we don't have people to lean on to get there, to that solution. So, mm-hmm.
It's all those back things you have to do that we're not aware of. I mean, it really is. The food's on your table, and you start eating because that's what you do around, supper time, dinner time.
That's right.
A lot of us don't understand all the hard work I know that goes into that. And there's certain probably precautions and steps you need to take to keep your animals safe. Because I know, hurricanes and things like that. Can you describe that a little bit of maybe things you need to do?
Yeah. So sometimes I get to be a little smart about it. I had some lady the week before this hurricane, we just had this hurricane come through, and she said, what are you going to do with all the cows? And I was like, and I just having one of those moments where I can't believe I'm just going to take 5 minutes to have to explain this. And I blurted out that I rented I have a contract with Greyhound, and they go around, pick everyone up, and they bring them over to the house. And then she looked at me. And then I was like, I got to back up. Listen, the problem is that we have to do the best that we can. And the one thing about it is North Carolina farmers right now, and even South Carolina farmers, we're taking a beat, livestock farmers, we're taking a beat right now from general public. We got to mitigate our risk. We got to do what we can. Now, we learned a lot of lessons in Matthew. Just 2 years ago, we got slammed with a hurricane, and having to deal with this, and we really haven't had time to recoup. We had time to put Band-Aids on the situations, but I mean, when you're losing money and then 2 years later you're losing more money, it just, you haven't had time to recoup. But so what we've done is like we mitigated our situation in that we know what areas really flood, move those animals out. We know what areas of the farms will flood, so move those animals up to higher ground. But here's the other problem. Prior to the flooding comes the wind. And so then you got to get these animals into sheltered areas, which might not be where the flooding areas are. There's just a lot of moving parts, transitions, pre-positioning hay. We have farms that we're running hay to right now because the pasture land is destroyed, and trying to keep things maintained. We're only 2 weeks into this ordeal, so it's still raw and new. But at the same time, the thing that people need to know is farmers are resilient. We're going to fight it. Tomorrow is a new day. And, but at the same time, we also all have to recognize too, that a lot of these problems are not our problems, or not our, no, it is our problem. It's not our fault, I meant to say. And here's what I mean. Because of urban development, there's new places that are flooding that never flooded before.
Oh.
There's new directions, and see, this is the thing nobody talks about. This is that freaking mind of mine, that when I sit here and can have conversations with people who were born on farms and were renting these farms or who bought farms, but you're talking to community members and they're like, yeah, the water's going to come from over that way. And then you're looking and the water's coming from another way. And it's like, wait a second, how did that happen? We've changed, cities are only worried about cities, and that becomes a problem because they're not worried about the downhill part. And there is more pavement today and less dirt to soak up the water. Now, at the end of the day, we got to realize we had 24 inches of rain drop on my house in a 3-day period. Like, there's nothing you can do about it.
No.
This is not our fault.
No,
guys.
It's not.
But at the same time, there was 24 inches of rain that dropped on in cities, and that water just running down the pavement. But it's coming from different directions. The other problem that we're seeing, and one of the things that we're big about, is wildlife ecology, wildlife management, conservation, and ecology. And a lot of our policies that we've had in place, not wanting to dive into politics, but we got to get the realization our creeks, our streams are choked with dead trees and stuff that came from cities, settlement. Right. My son and I trout fish, and we go to mountains, and there's even right now, there's sand that is in rock beds. Where did that sand come from? It didn't come from that area. It came from somewhere else. But now it's a degradation of the ecology, but it's urban development. And so we get into these situations where people are fussing at us, and in some regards, we have to take the blame.
Right.
But at the same time, guys, it ain't us. It ain't all of us. And so
it's so important for us to be empathetic and understanding of everyone's, problems with what they do their jobs, because everyone has them, and we can't just say, why aren't you doing this, or how would this happen? It's life happens. You can't stop it. You can't stop these storms, these hurricanes from coming.
So one of the things that I like to let our customers know is this. I had to know that you and I were going to talk 3 years ago. It took 3 years from the time that we got that cow inseminated to the time the calf is born, to raising it, to harvesting it so that you can eat it. It's 3 years. And we do we talk to youth all the time, and we always say, because the youth is our life, a lot happens in 3 years, but it's not as traumatic at times. The kids, oh my God, in 5 minutes, I just broke up with a boyfriend or girlfriend, and it's like, ah! So, but anyways, and that's what I always lead in with is, how many boyfriends and girlfriends have you had in 3 years? How much has your life changed in 3 years? That's the block of time from the time that the cow was inseminated to the time that we're eating. And I don't know of any farmer that really likes to lose like they're losing.
Right.
And get to that understanding. Farmers do what they got to, do a lot of times in the contract business and all of that. It's I'm not in agreement with it, but I can't look at my neighbor and look down on them, because sometimes you got to do what you got to do, because the world is not easy on us.
No. And I think you're probably always taking flack and,
Yes.
hard questions and wondering what you're doing and why you're doing that and why aren't you doing it this way, but they're not in the business.
Yes.
You don't have the time.
Yeah, we talk to people all the time, like animal rights groups or these certification deals, and they're like, well, you need to be doing this. And I'm like, do you realize the 5 other problems that you have just caused? Well, we don't care about those problems. We care about this. And I'm like, but what about the other problems? And so that's where, again, we spend the time and we spend the money. Let's try to satisfy your concern while fixing the other concerns, and I'm one about dialogue. I'm one about diversities, and, I love it. I've got myself into some wonderful places in life, and it just, my wife and my kids look at me and scratch their heads. My wife drug tests me at least twice a month just to make sure. But no, we're all, I'm all the time looking at, I'm willing to listen, and to counteract what my 3rd grade teacher wrote on my report card that my wife found. It says Patrick doesn't play well with others, and it's perceived that way. But in reality of life, we're sitting here, and I might disregard something that is said at this time, but it's because I got to get 5 other steps in place first before I can put attention to that. Listening to customers, listening to opposition has made us who we are in what our beliefs are. It tells our story. I'm just that person.
Well, you just seem very transparent to me. It's kind of like what you see is what you get. So If you're going to ask a question, you're going to get the answer. And like you said, you may get down the road a little bit more as you get everything in place. But if you're going to ask the question, don't get upset if you don't like the answer.
That's what. So talking about transparency. This required a drug test. I had heard that an animal rights group was talking about the horrors of animal slaughter. They were going to give a speech on it. And I disappeared, and I didn't tell nobody where I was going. But I went, and I sat in the back room and I listened. And afterwards, I went up and I introduced myself to them, and by name, not that I owned a facility, but I introduced by name. I said, "Have you ever seen it?" "Well, no." "Do you want to see it?" I said, "Well, nobody will let us in." I said, "All right." I said, "Give me two concessions without any prejudice, and I'll let you in." And he said, "What's that?" I said, "Number one, you got to give me 48 hours notice, just for the simple fact that I need to rearrange my schedule so I'm there with you. Not trying to hide nothing, change nothing. Just that's all. That's the okay. What's it?" I said, "Second of all, you're going to be searched for a transmittal recorders." I said, the problem is that pictures don't tell the full story always. There is bad in the industry. I'll admit it, but it's bad because there's human beings involved, and humans are not perfect. But so I was like, I'm willing to show you, but show you. And in a proper manner. So they agreed. Didn't say a word to nobody. They came. We brought them on the slaughter floor and scared the crap out of them. But at the end of the day, we were able to have that conversation that we, again, let's go back. I have time and money invested for 3 years. I'm not going to ruin my last 5 seconds of this whole operation. We're not going to go and try to do that. We're going to do everything we can not to do that. But also we pay honor and glory to the cows. They're providing us nutrition. We don't want them to move on and then it all go to waste. We want to, utilize everything we possibly can. And so it didn't allow us the other conversation too. 96% of the population still eats meat. Mm-hmm. You can fight all you want to fight and you can throw all the money you want to throw at it. They still eat the meat. So the best thing in life can be to support those who you agree are doing it right. Because every time you eat a piece of meat and it's ours and it's for a meal, that meal never happens again, and you affected the people who are controlling our food system right now. And that's how you extract change. Because once that meal happened, it's never happening again. And when you miss that opportunity over and over and over and over again, that's how you extract change. Let's have this dialogue. Let's have the diversity. Let's have the dialogue, but let's be real about it and be transparent. We throw open doors. My wife has a vision. Again, I don't want this to be misconceived in what I'm about to say, but to give you an illustration, she wants her facility to be like a car wash, where the wall is a glass window, and you can come and stand and look at any point at any time, because that's the part that everybody gets into hindrance about. But let's be transparent. 100% of the time, going to cost too much money at this point in time. But I mean, that's literally our vision in life. And so I don't know if Cargill, Smithfield, or any of them that are willing to do something like that. We are. Let's throw open the doors.
Well, I think it makes people feel safer, feel better about what they're consuming when they know there's no secrets.
Exactly.
And that's a big deal to me.
Yes. And you're exactly right. Food tastes better. Mm-hmm. It's like you can not manipulate. You can change the flavor, texture, everything with food by getting to know the person. There's part of that is a subconscious, situation going on.
I absolutely agree. Absolutely agree with that, because food has really been something. It's been a big push for me, and when I'm consuming what I know is good for me, and possibly also knowing where it came from, it just tastes different. Mm-hmm. You feel good.
Yes.
Is there anything else? You went into a lot about the beef production and what many consumers don't know. Is there anything else that maybe we as consumers don't know about the beef production that you would like them to know?
It is probably, and I'm probably going to get tons of hate emails when I say this. It is probably the most hardest. There's another word that I want to use other than corrupt, and I can't think of it, but not necessarily corrupt, but controlled. Mm-hmm. Industry out of all of agriculture. It is absolutely amazing to me how well, first of all, let's look at it from this way, and let's let everybody put themselves into their personal situations. we have a 80, 89, 90, 91% conception rate. It takes 9 months to have a calf. It takes, and then out of that, then you got you have a 2% loss either at birth or before weaning. So 2% of that won't make it. So think about the time and money that is put into it just to get to the end. And then on top of that, now you got to deal with government regulations.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I was thinking about was, like, people want all these certifications and stuff. This is my rule book that I got to play in every day. Every page, front and back, has to deal with some government regulation dealing with animal slaughter. Mm-hmm. And processing and further processing. I have to satisfy all of this in order for you to eat.
I'd say for those that aren't watching, it's a pretty thick book.
It's tremendous. And it literally gets into that whole, at any point in time, human being that we fail at one section or one code, it can be thrown away. We still haven't gotten to where you eat.
Right. The business side is so overwhelming.
My wife, when we first opened up our facility, because we separated our operations, so I deal with the cattle side and she deals with the facility side. She'd sit here and she would cry. And I'm like, I'd come in, I'm like, what's wrong with you? And she's like, I am overwhelmed. And the first day that we were open, there was 7 individuals with white hats that said USDA on it. There's no trial run. You got to know what you're doing when you do it. And each one of these people represent a different department. And at the end of the day, they could all just say, somebody could say, nope, I'm not satisfied. And then you're done. It is like overwhelming. So, like, people need to understand from a cattle production standpoint, we as the industry are not here to like doing wrong intentionally. There are issues, but I think over time that those are that generations are passing on, and so I think it's cleaning itself up. But then we get into the control piece. There's 5 major meat packers left in the United States. We in agriculture, we have consolidated agriculture. I had to laugh the other day. Had a news. I had an email come across that news headline, and it said that some company just bought out Sonic, and I was like, okay, I'm intrigued. Who's this company? I've never heard of them before. But then it listed out who the sub companies of the one is, and it was Arby's and Buffalo Wild Wings. And I was like, I didn't have a clue Arby's and Buffalo Wild Wings was owned by the same company. Like we have such, in the food industry, we have such a major consolidation. Why? We go back to what we just said earlier, and that is that you only have one chance to have your product on that plate for that meal. One chance. It never happens again. No matter how much we want to try, it won't happen again. And so there was a growth in companies, and then all of a sudden there was too many companies, so then there was a consolidation of companies. There's only 5 meat packers left, but then 5 are in control of everything. And so that's the piece that is that is having to be worked on now. And those are the things that we're touching in now. There is numbers of times when our beef is served at a restaurant and then some distributor says it's not in your contract, you can't, because we don't provide it, you can't serve it. There's marketing dollars involved, and there's beef checkoff dollars. There's all grades of stuff that's involved. And that's the piece that we're still not to the point where you can make your own decision on what food you eat. Somebody else is making that decision. And that's our next frontier. We figured out how to breed the cows, increase our efficiency there. We figured out how to increase the efficiency to require less acreage. We figured out the slaughter and processing piece. We're in a whole new frontier now. And rolling out new programs that are very interesting and fun, things that we haven't thought about. But that's where that's the next piece. We got to get out of this other people controlling us bit.
Right. I don't think I even realized there's only 5 packaging places left. But that's something new, and I don't think a lot of the public maybe would know that, or it's just me. I'm not really sure.
No, you really don't, because and that's just it, is that there's so many subsidiaries to companies that there's no like big banner that says, hey, this company is actually a Tyson company.
Oh, gotcha.
And so like you see diversity out there, but you're not understanding the subsidiary piece and following it all. The other piece, and let's just dive right into it. I know this is a very touchy subject. My son, my wife is a member of the National Agri-Women's Association, and every late spring they go to Washington, D.C. for fly-in. And it's to meet, to develop their legislative platforms for agriculture across America. And my son went for the first time this year with her, and they left out of one of our senator's office, and he called, and my wife's standing right there. He said, "Hey, what did you say to Senator such and such a couple of years ago?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" And my wife, you can hear her laughing. He said, "What did you tell him?" And I laughed, and I said, "What are you talking about? This situation?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, why did that come up? It's been 4 years ago." He said, "Oh, they still remember you." And that's dealing with country of origin labeling that. Here's what you don't know as a consumer, or you might know and you might not connect it. The last person to touch your food before it's sold is the person who puts the inspection ledger on there. Those carcasses are frozen. Those carcasses are put across in freighter ships. They're being brought in by other countries or from other countries. They're being unloaded. But once it hits America, and now we have rules for for those animals be slaughtered in other countries. They do have some rules they have to play by. But you don't know which steak it is unless you get to know the farmer. You don't know. You look at these, steak is a steak, and you don't know because it all has a USDA inspection ledger. And we passed the Country of Origin Labeling Act several years ago, and then all of a sudden, and this is probably something else going to get me in trouble, but all of a sudden, like, we as a country started balking at it. And from the industry side, we were balking at it. Oh, do you know what the cost of changing these labels will be? I actually demonstrated to one company. I said, hold on a sec. And I went in FaceTime. I put them on FaceTime, and I went in my processing room, and I told the young lady, and I said, hey, can you make a correction on label? She said, yes. And she makes the correction. She prints it. 30 seconds. I said, now, what do you mean? What's the cost? Like, we have the technology now, to make these changes on the fly. But that was their argument. They don't want to tell the truth. Okay? And then we got to deal with Oh, the WTO suing us. Canada's mad. I don't care about Canada. Love them to death. Actually have a good friend in Quebec. My daughter is friends with kid from Ontario, and fine, but I'm trying to eat in America. I'm trying to live in America. So when we throw out these arguments, WTO is suing us. Okay. And that was my argument with my senator. I literally asked him if his paycheck, being a U.S. senator, was in the monetary denomination of pesos or British pound, because he is not representing me.
Right.
Because he did vote to repeal the Country of Origin Labeling Act. He's not representing me. And that got really into the other part of the problem. In the argument, and this is where we really, train went off the tracks with us. He said, well, I polled the producers in North Carolina. Nobody called me. So you didn't poll all the producers. But then I got to thinking about it. There is actual confliction of words. He polled producers, but he didn't poll the producers. He polled the contract growers. We did not we're not separating the terms. I will admit a contract grower is still a producer. I will admit that a contract grower is still a family farm. I will admit that they have the same struggles that we have, but the difference of their struggle is I'm out on the island by myself. All they got to do is be stewards of the animals, raise them with less risk. They still have risk. Let's please have that understanding. They have risk, but they have a step down less risk.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, that's so. I mean, get off on a tangent, but there's a tremendous amount of things that we don't realize, and it's just we got to be real. The industry's got to figure out that the internet is going to tell it. Either somebody's going to tell our story, or we have to. We got to stop this. 2003, it was suggested to me that I didn't need to do what I'm doing. That at the end of the day, either customers going to eat what we produce, or they're going to starve. And then I looked at him and I kind of chuckled. I said, but they're not going to starve because we're now a global economy. And that was in 2003. Let's fast forward. I can get anything I want at any point in time that I want. The internet made it accessible. I can buy something here in America, and I can buy it from Taiwan, and it'll automatically do the currency conversions, and then it'll be shipped here. Doesn't matter. So no, that's the wrong thinking. The thinking is we need to give what the customer wants, what the customer desires, be the provider, be the producer. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, we also got to tell our story, because somebody else is telling it for us.
And you got to get the word out there, because that's what happens. And it's very easy to believe what you hear first.
Yes.
And when you get, excuse me, I think I'm getting a cold here. When you're able to get your story out there, people can see like the other side. And I think it's important to hear both. And like, okay, I can't always believe everything I hear. This is where it's coming from. And because you were talking a lot about buying things different places, what about your new direct sales model? How does that work?
So it's so funny. It's so simplistic. At the same time, we actually were doing it in America at one point in time, but we didn't realize it. So we have different platforms that we market through. We are approved in U.S. Foods. We are approved in Cisco. We were approved in another company called Cheney Brothers as a distribution company. Guess what? At the end of the day, they have customers and I can fight the fight. I have to be approved in those companies and just pray that they're going to buy from me. Okay. Because because they're not going to turn down the sale. But then, the other thing is that there's always a broker involved. Before the distributor, there's a broker that represents you. All the food on the retail shelves has somebody representing them. It just didn't get there. And it is rather interesting because from the standpoint that their job is to get you through the door and in front of the distributor to then be able to get out on trucks. And we also got to all recognize too that Cisco US Foods, is as much as we want to demigod them, at the flip side to it, because of the tonnage of products they move, they do it cheaper than anybody else until we got here, till we got to this point. So in May, we rolled out on Amazon. The reason why we rolled out on Amazon was again, thinking different. I want to know, is Amazon a place where they don't play God? Remember we talked about human nature in the industry? Humans do what humans want. They're playing God, and that's what got mad. I got mad because there was a distributor, or a broker that would not take us to our product to a company because he said our price points were too high. You have to lower the price points. You got to get it down here. There was no way of doing it. I was like, why are you playing God? Why don't you just let them make a decision? Nope, we're not going to do it. So I wondered about that. And so I went on Amazon. So Amazon does kind of the way play God is. It's all data analytics, and we've gotten pretty good at it now, and we're having a fun time with it. I like to know why somebody buys, but there's no actual way to figure out why somebody buys. But what happened was when we rolled out on Amazon and our sales picked up, we got a phone call from UPS. Hey, we want to renegotiate rates with you. Well, you got to actually negotiate before you renegotiate. And I was like, you've done messed up. You've opened up the door. Let's go for it. But I had this image in my mind of oh my gosh, what are we doing here? Like new world. It's so funny to me that we have simplified the complicated things, but we've complicated the simple things. Mm. And one of the things that was complicated has been simplified is the UPS FedEx model. We've settled on UPS. Why? Because at the end of the day, they have royally just bought into what we're wanting to do, and they are a legitimate partner. And at the end of the day, also, I demonstrated to them how many tons of ag products is not going on their trucks. Because we have in our mind that beef has to be in a refrigerated truck. We have in our mind that beef can only get to you one way, or cucumbers or tomatoes or eggs or whatever can only get one way. So what we have done is that we have partnered with UPS with shipping rates that is ridiculous. And what we have done is then created an online cloud-based ordering system. Any restaurant, any retailer in America, actually, better than that, anywhere in the world, because that's what UPS keeps explaining. I'm like, hey, can we get it here in this time? And they're like, anywhere in the world in 48 hours. Yeah, but what about right here? Yeah, what part of anywhere in the world in 48 hours? I'm like, oh, okay, anywhere in the world.
So anywhere.
I can go anywhere in the world. I keep saying, well, what about here? But anyhow, we can go anywhere in the world in 48 hours, max. I mean, that's the max time. At a cost that is nominal. let's put it this way. I have a restaurant. Well, back up. I have a distributor that was spanking me because I don't care. And I tell them at the end of the day, you got to realize it is my job to feed my family. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, I'm not going to bow down to what you're saying, because at the end of the day, that is my job. It's my job to keep lights on and keep the food on the table for my family. And I'm not going to apologize for anything that I do on that. But had a restaurant called me and said, "Are you seriously out of ground beef?" "No." "Well, such and such says that you are." "No." "Well, what are we going to do?" They said it's going to be 3 weeks. I said, "Let's try this. This is brand new." I said, "Let's try it." He got fearful because when you think about shipping beef, how much is that going to cost? The funny part about it is he's saving 90 cents a pound from what the distributor charging him.
Wow.
Significant. Here's the fun part about this. Yeah, the problem with sustainability and local is that we have a price that is not commodity price. We need more because we're not surviving. The farmer's dying. But that model doesn't line up with the distributor model and the broker model. The distributor is going to charge somewhere between 30 to 40%. The broker is going to charge somewhere between 2 to 5%. So you put, and they're the last ones to touch it before the end user. So they're going to get their percentage first, and then they're going to tell you this is the price that you can top out at. So the two worlds they're repelling each other. UPS is just wanting to be a driver. Now I don't have to invest in trucks. I don't have to invest in insurance. I don't have to invest in drivers. I don't have to invest in risk. Why? Because UPS has already done it. UPS has put more trucks on the road because of the growth and the further development of Amazon. And so it continues to be getting down cheaper. On top of that, so that's the first thing. So the first thing is that anybody in the world can buy our beef. And anybody in the world in 48 hours can get their beef, max. But then on top of that, we have worked with UPS that we are carbon offsetting every delivery. So there is a zero carbon footprint on the distribution part of you to eat. So we're excited, if you can't tell, like I'm giddy.
Big smile.
But it's because, guess what, folks? Your restaurant, your grocery store, your house, you can feed yourself. Because right now, the way it's working is somebody, unless you're shopping at the farmer's market or unless you go to somebody's farm, or you don't, or you go to a co-op, it is almost to this degree. Somebody is making the decision of what options you have to buy before you get the option to buy it. People are playing God with food. And so we are, and again, it's a kind of twisted way of looking at it, but it's the reality. But also the sustainability person can get what they need. The end user could pay less for it. And all UPS is doing their job, and that is to move stuff on their truck. That's the fun part about this.
Well, it's interesting. It's like thinking outside the box and making it so simple at the same time. It's like not complicating things, and it's working out better. It's like less is more.
Yes, exactly. Yes. We have just rolled it out. The hurricane kind of messed us up in timing of everything. But we're having to educate a lot, and that's going to be that's a painful. I have to stop farming to educate and try to get the message out. But I'm so excited in that we literally, the cooler technologies are tremendously better. We did 2 months of testing. We have good friends that across America that we're able to do test shipments of different weights, different size boxes to get the cost down, because all UPS is doing is charging on a dimensional weight. And so depending on the configuration of the box, temperatures, temperature controls. So that's where, so like we were putting data loggers in and we were monitoring temperatures. We're literally sending fresh beef anywhere we want to, fresh cut, right off the cow, right to the marketplace, 48 hours. The other thing is that we're reducing the food mileage. That's the other piece about us. A lot of times we talk about food miles, and what we're doing is we're talking about actual air miles. We're not talking about land miles. That was the other piece that I was understanding. What's the statement? 1,500 miles from the field to the plate. It's 1,500 miles from the last person that touched it to the plate. It's 34 to 3,800 with beef to get from East Coast back to East Coast. If when we say grass-fed, we say Australia is cheaper than American beef. If we want to throw in Australia, if you're going to eat, a lot of people eat grass-fed beef or environmentally conscious, let's look at the mileage. 7,900 miles just to get to California. Then the mileage to your house, and go by road mileage. So these are the things that we think about and that we want to have people understand. We're about sustainability. We are a for-profit business. We want to survive. I have 2 kids. They're next generation of over a century farm. But let's get the people out of our operation. Let's get these naysayers, all these people who are constantly they have their hand out, and it's taking the food out of my children's mouth. I have good friends that are distributors. I have good friends that are brokers. I got good friends that are saleswomen. But we don't need them well, we kind of need them. But I mean, because if they would tell our story, then that's what we need them for. But we don't need them to sit there and dictate based upon profitability and how much commission you're going to get over what food you get to eat.
This concludes part 1 of the Know Better, Live Best podcast with Patrick Robinette. Tune into episode 13 where Patrick continues the conversation about quality, the need for transparency in the food system, and his view on the future of farming.